Are you ready?
Hello, and welcome to the Whole House Podcast, where you can find home, health, and family all in one place. Our team is comprised of moms from different upbringings and backgrounds, and we each have different passions and giftings and strengths. We each represent a different room, and we all make up the whole house. So grab a cup of coffee and join our overly caffeinated ladies here for the Whole House Podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the Whole House. Today it's Kathleen
and Jessica.
And today we're going to talk about spiritual productivity. And Jessica has a little something that she's going to read to get us started.
So I was working yesterday and this popped into my head. It's what defines productivity? Maybe days where you feel like you've been the least productive with earthly tasks, you've made great progress with spiritual tasks. And I can kind of tell you where that came from. Every week I write down a to-do list and I watch myself cross them off. Lately I've been having a lot of spiritual battles in my life, and I've been noticing that my earthly to-do list has not had as many things crossed off. Yesterday I spent my entire day in a spiritual battle that I feel like I came out ahead in.
Wow.
So that's kind of, I had an epiphany maybe, or an aha moment where, Jessica, your earthly to-do list is not as important to cross those things off of as what you just accomplished in the spiritual productivity area of your life.
Right, and that's hard for us to grasp because I, like Jessica, I'm like every day I have a list and I've got, sticky notes in my planner of things that I need to accomplish, whether it's writing or doing something for the whole house or whatever it is. And we were just talking about this before we started recording because I have so many grown children. My house is like a giant revolving door, and it's sometimes difficult for me to pivot when one of my kids will just show up because they need to talk about something or something's going on in their life, or they just show up and I'm like, I'm doing these things that are on my list, I have to do these things that are on my list because I have to get my check marks and I have to finish them. And just a couple weeks ago, I literally had 2 or 3 people just showing up every single day.
Wow.
And so my list of things I needed to do, like editing a book before it comes out, those things, literally none of them got done. And as soon as I would sit down to start working on one of them, somebody else would show up. So this is a good lesson for me too, because at the time, I'm stopping and investing in those relationships.
Right.
And those are spiritual things because a relationship with God the Father is what we're here for.
Right.
And so he wants us to be in relationship with him first and then with our family and other people. So I have to be able to stop and do those things. Hey, Moira. Hi. Your mommy is putting Glenna down for a nap. You want to sit up here with me? Oh, there she is.
And that's what we were talking about how life is made of interruptions, and learning to pivot is maybe doing exactly what God is asking us to do in that moment. I have spoke about this before.
That's so hard.
I know it is.
It's like gritting my teeth and
Yeah. But I have talked about it before, about how one of my biggest prayers is for God to always lead me where he needs me the most. So maybe my to-do list is not that. And you said you have people showing up at your door. My phone rings constantly. It's my phone. 8 different people at one time are is needing something that has nothing to do with where I need my focus, where I think I need my focus. Where I think that I need my focus to be. So then I have to pivot, and I see myself being used for what God needs me to be doing, but that's hard. I mean, that's a big prayer. I know that that's a big prayer, and I'm okay with that. When I pray it, it's shifting my mindset at the time when he's asking me to do that. And it's deep conversations with people, maybe talking them out of a situation that they're in, or just giving the advice that he needs me to give them. That's the spiritual productivity that I'm seeing being done in my life. And most of the times when I flip my page, because I, like I said, try to do a weekly to-do list, and it's usually a notebook-sized piece of paper, long. I have to transfer it to the next week.
Yes,
I just
me
rewrite
too.
it.
Yeah, me too. Because I have a calendar planning meeting with myself and God every Sunday. So I know it's like when I'm making these plans, I am praying while I make the plans.
Right.
So I know that I need to make the plans, but at the same time, like you said, you just need to be able to pivot, because it really is interesting. Hindsight, you can look back and say, oh my gosh, that conversation that I had with that person, that had to be the Holy Spirit speaking through me, because I never would have known to say those things. And then, like, if someone, like, for some reason, and it just must be a mom thing, but adoptive parents will message me late at night. Well, late to me.
Yeah.
It's after 8 o'clock. And then they'll have this whole big long thing that they need to hash out. And then I just have to just say, God, you're going to have to speak through me, because I absolutely, there's nothing left here at all. Because I am so exhausted. And so anybody who knows me, like past 8 o'clock, there's this just little switch that turns off.
I have that switch also. And I don't think that I would have ever known the difference or not learned to become frustrated with the interruptions of life had I not learned to be still. And that's one of the keynotes that we have here, is until I learned to be still and pray that prayer that God uses me for His will, not my own, did I start to maybe see those interruptions as a calling, as a task from Him. So I am more accepting of the things that He's asking me to do. But I can see how it can be easily missed if you're just by that check mark to-do list all day long. You would miss the voice of the Holy Spirit. When I put my phone on Do Not Disturb, maybe I'm missing some opportunities that He expects me to take.
Right. You think about all the times that Jesus healed someone when He was on this earth. They were mostly interruptions.
Yes, true.
Like the woman pulling on his robe, the guy being lowered through the roof. I mean, really.
Right?
Lowered through the roof. And then the people, calling out to Him from the side of the road, Jesus. And, He has an agenda. I need to get to this certain place. I'm going to go there and teach. And all these interruptions. So and true. That's when He turns around and heals someone. And so we have to remember that life is just made up of those godly interruptions.
So true.
And we have to start seeing them that way. And one of the things that we were talking about was, that time to be still and know how to be quiet. And in the Thriving with Teens course, we were just talking about yesterday about how there's just information overload.
Yes.
Information overload. And in this day and age, we have to practice the presence of God. We have to learn how to be still. I mean, how many times do I get up in the morning and it's like, okay, I'm going to get out my Bible, get out my journal, and then my phone goes off.
Right.
Or, there's always something calling for our attention all the time. And those kind of interruptions, we have to be able to set aside for that time with God.
Absolutely. And as a whole, as a society, we say how rude it is to be on your phone when you're face to face with a person, with your spouse. You see that in person, how that interrupts your relationship with a person, a fleshly person, or a person of flesh. So what makes us think that we don't have to set that time aside and be still if we want to have a relationship with God and open ourselves up to that? So it's information overload coming at you from all directions, and it's as soon as you wake up in the morning.
Exactly. Right. And if that, you think about it, like really think about the God of the universe who created the heavens and the earth, created us, wants to spend time with each one of us personally, each one of us. And we're picking up our phone.
Right.
because there's a notification from Twitter or Facebook or someone liked our Instagram post, and we're like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. And then, I don't know, that sensation that you get sometimes when you're scrolling, it's like your emotions are up and then they're down and then they're up and then and it's like, no, I don't want to do that. That's not how I want to start my day.
And I just recently deleted my Twitter app from my phone, and it's the second time that I feel that I've been called to do that. If I don't have the app on my phone, I'm not going to log on to my laptop or anything and get onto that site, because I was not even becoming, or I wasn't completing any task, whether that be earthly or spiritual, because I was telling my daughter, I would end up 18 pages over on somebody's page. I didn't even know who it was because I got invested in comments under something, and it always seemed to be political, and I was like, this is not serving me or my to-do list from any direction at all, so I have to completely get rid of it, because I know that I can't man it myself.
Right.
I'm going to get lost in it.
Well, it's like the scripture says, if your arm offends you, cut it off.
Yeah.
And that's what it means. It doesn't mean literally cut your arm off.
Thank goodness.
I'm so glad about that. But if there's something that is taking up all of your emotional energy and your time, and you can't do anything, then you need to cut it off. You need to cut it out of your life, no matter how difficult it is. I remember Lori and I once did a social media fast, and it's like I had to take all the apps and put them in one group and like hide them on my phone. And just like we did that for a month, like nothing on there at all.
Because it's crazy how you just get on your phone and your thumb knows right where to go, where that app is that you need it to be. Yeah, so I can see where you'd have to hide it.
Right, because you don't even think about it. You just pick up your phone.
Right.
And and it's just so overwhelming. So there were a couple things that I had that I was going to read. This is from the book Essentialism. We were talking about being spiritually productive. So spiritually productive, and this is just a little Venn diagram, is doing the right thing for the right reason at the right time. And we have to trust God with that, because like we were saying, we can get our whole list of this is the right thing at the right time for the right reason, and then God just kind of blindsides us and says, no, this is what I want you to do. And I'll tell you just kind of a funny example. When I was a young Christian in college, and my older brother was rooming with me, and he had gone somewhere, and I was doing my Bible study, and he calls me on the phone. He's like, I have a flat tire. Can you come and get me? And I'm like, but I'm doing my Bible study. And he's like, what? You're not going to come and get me?
I'm stranded.
I did go and get him, but it was just like that moment of my spiritual trying to be mature, but I was being very immature because I'm thinking, I'm doing my Bible study. I can't come and get you, And I did go get him, but that's just a funny story. But I thought, I'm doing the right thing.
Right.
Right now.
Right. And that's what we put so much of thinking that we put so much on our own shoulders, thinking that we know what we're doing at the right time.
Yeah.
I don't even know that I'm doing the right thing. You know what I mean? Unless I learn to be still and ask God to guide me every step of the way. I have no idea whether it's the right thing, the right time, or any of that at all.
Right. And I was watching a live with Jennifer Jukes Lee and Katie Reed last night, and they were talking about, Jennifer was talking about how even more so in our culture, we think in the United States we're like so in control of everything.
Yeah.
And so we get this pseudo control. So we think we're in control of our spirituality, of our physical being, of our schedule and everything. And it's false. We're really not.
At all.
And it's scary to think that we're not in control. But it's reassuring to know that God is in control.
Right.
I've said before, I'm not really fond of flying. And Jerry and I flew to Florida last week and then back. It's like once you get there, like, I did it. And then you start thinking, I have to go back. And I'm praying these prayers like, okay, Lord, I can do it if there are no delays, or if we don't have to sit on the plane or the runway.
Right.
And God's just like, do you trust me? Do you trust me?
And that is so
do you trust
hard.
me? It is. I'm like, yeah, I do, but can you do it this way?
I do, but.
Right. So when we were in Charlotte, North Carolina, at a layover, and then we get on the plane, I literally thought we were going to drive back to Pittsburgh. That plane was driving up and down the runway for so long, waiting its turn. And God's still like, do you trust me? Do you trust me? And obviously, I'm here.
Yes.
I'm alive.
Thank God.
And I did it.
But it does. It takes so much trust in it, and that's so scary for us. We're so controlling by nature, and,
right?
And, that's what I was just sitting here thinking. I can maybe have weeks where I check off everything.
Yes.
On my earthly to-do list, but I don't maybe feel fulfilled by the time the week is over.
Right.
Or it's scary to sit here and think of what I have missed that I should have done.
Right.
That I had a spiritual calling to do that I overlooked because I was in control of that to-do list.
Mm-hmm.
I checked everything off, wiped my hands of it, and I'm good to go. I can see the product of me crossing off that list, and that's what we were talking about how spiritual productivity does not have instant gratification every time. I have been working on one aspect of my life for 20 years. I finally maybe think that I'm getting a little nudge. Not to say that I am. I think that I'm making a little nudge. But who's to say that this isn't 20, 30, 40 years of a task that he needs me to fulfill to completion?
Exactly. And the thing, we had talked about this in the Thriving for Teens course, is just like eternal value instead of temporal value.
True.
And there are so many times that we're investing in a relationship or something that God has just put in front of us at the last minute, and we don't see the fruit of that right now. But it often has eternal value.
So
you know,
true.
I clean my kitchen constantly. I'm a freak about having it clean, but literally it doesn't have any eternal value to have no crumbs on my counter. Even though I think in my mind it does.
Right.
I mean, it does if you're teaching your kids chores, you're teaching them things. But if that becomes the soul of your purpose, like my house has to be completely clean all the time, and you get hung up on that, there's no eternal value there.
Yeah, and you miss what is eternal that maybe has come into your life, and you didn't allow any interruptions.
Right, and you think of that in the way of hospitality too, because if we feel free to open up our homes, then we can put some eternal value in those relationships of people that we're inviting over. But if we always think, well, I cannot invite someone in my home because it's not perfect.
Right.
Or the toilet's dirty, or this tile in that corner needs scrubbed. It's like we micromanage and think about every little teeny tiny thing when someone's coming over, and then
you miss that opportunity.
You miss the opportunity.
I think we parent a lot like that too.
Yes.
We parent a lot like the earthly productivity with our children. Like, they have to play sports, or they have to do this, or they have to do that.
Right.
Like, if we don't do that, we are not being productive with our children. Mm-hmm. How are we feeding spiritual productivity with our kids if we are keeping ourselves busy like that all the time and missing the opportunities that we may have to minister to them in other ways?
Right. And you can't, it's very difficult to minister to your children if they're outside of the home.
Yeah. All
the time. I remember making that really difficult decision especially for one of our kids who is very, very athletic, that he wasn't going to play any team sports because he just didn't do well with team sports because he tried to take over the team. And it would just make him angry and have arguments with the coach and whatever. Now, he did play a little bit more when he got in high school, but when he was little, we were just like, we're not going to do that. And plus, Jerry and I, because we had 7 kids, we were at the soccer field like from the time school got out until like 9 o'clock every single night. And it was just the little kids, I was just dragging them everywhere. And we finally just said, we're stopping.
But
we're not doing this.
Society will tell you that if you're not the soccer mom, having that kind of schedule where you're not running from the time they get out of school until the time that it's time to put them to bed, that you haven't truly been productive.
Right.
Society looks down upon you just picking your kids up from school, taking them home, and calling it a day.
Right, and I felt I got a lot of negative feedback, and I got a lot of flack even from family, especially about that one particular kid who is now a paramedic, and he still loves doing outdoor stuff like rock climbing and hiking and all that kind of stuff. And I think that he's more well-rounded and well-adjusted now because we stepped back. And I thought, once we pulled out of the soccer thing, my kids were so much more peaceful. I mean, they weren't perfect. I'm not saying that. But there was so much more peace because they had time to play in the creek and have an imagination. And
that brings up a good point. I think that if you put all of your focus, let's stay with the sports thing, with that earthly productivity aspect of whatever, those kids can grow up and think that defines them.
Yes.
Because they haven't seen any kind of spiritual anything.
Right.
They can think that defines them. For instance, I just had Mia is my daughter is very gifted in math. Very gifted in math. She always gets pulled to that math. People tell her, you need to take engineering, you need to do this, you need to do that. And I told her the other day, because you're good at math, that does not define you.
Exactly.
I do not want you to think that you have to grow up and have a job in the math field because you're good at it. You need to speak with the Holy Spirit and see what He needs you to do spiritually. If you end up an architect, that's fabulous.
Right.
But it does not define you. And I think that happens a lot with sports and stuff as well. We think, we're getting this, we're productive in this sense of the word, and it becomes your definition.
And that very thing happened to me because I always tested really high in math and science. So I went to college and I got a math and education degree, and I'm a writer. So I was like, which was like, I was always drawn to the writing thing. I was always writing on the side. It was a hobby. But you know what? I didn't have someone telling me those things when I was younger. I didn't have someone leading me in that way because my mom did not become a Christian until I was in junior high, and she was still trying to navigate her own path.
Right.
Oh, we had a really great family life, but those kind of things, it was just like for girls, math and science, math and science, math and science.
Right, and I'm actually a little bit fearful that she will get that from the world. I already see it a little bit. Like, you need to be in STEM, this, and STEM that, and STEM this. And I'm just like, if you want to be, that's fine. But just because you're good in math. I had a teacher ask me last night, they're like, why isn't she in gifted program? She's one of our best students. And I said, I let them test her once.
Yeah.
She missed it by 2 points. I didn't even tell her that she was being tested because I know what kind of personality she has. And I didn't want the success or the failure of that test to define her. So I didn't even tell her. And she didn't make it, and she never knew.
Right.
So I'm not going to tell her now,
Right.
I'm not going to tell her now and think that defines her. So if she would be advanced or wouldn't be advanced, that would dictate the avenue that she takes throughout her life.
Right. And that's the thing. We have to be really careful. My eldest daughter said when my kids are getting a little bit older, I'm not going to tell them that they're smart, which they really are. Sam and Theo are really smart. She said, I'm not going to tell them that because I don't want that to be their expectation for the rest of their life, is that they're the smart ones, because we can. And that really pulls away from our spirituality because God has His plan for us. Right. But if the world is telling us, you have this thing and you are this, so you need to do this, then we can get stuck going the wrong place for the wrong reason at the wrong time.
Right, and I never want her to feel, especially as a girl or as a woman, that she would have to pick math over a family or a career over a family, because that's all since she's been little that she's talked about is having kids. And I never want and if maybe that's where she'll be the most productive, is at home with her own kids.
Right, and I think there's a huge fallacy that if you are a stay-at-home mom, that you're not intelligent.
Yeah.
And the truth is that when you are a stay-at-home mom, you have to be intelligent in a lot of areas because you're an administrator, you're running the home, you're often paying the bills, you're planning the menu, you're shopping for the groceries, and a lot of girls are not prepared for that phase in their life. And I think that having that math background, because that helped me, just being able to do math in my head and figure out those sorts of things, I think that is majorly overlooked. Yeah. And I don't like the fact that when someone says, well, what do you want to do with your life? Well, I'm going to be a mom. Yeah, but what else?
Right. Yeah.
What else do you need to be?
Yeah, so she's 13 and we already talk about that because I was not gifted in math and I still got that from the world.
Yeah.
I still got that. Well,
right.
I mean, what do you want? And I know that it's pushed on them a lot more now than it was on us. College and
yes.
jobs and,
yes.
you know, money and all of that stuff.
Right. It is. It is pushed a lot more.
The to-do list, the earthly productivity
yes.
is pushed on us.
It's like
tenfold.
you have to accomplish this and this and this and this and this, and you get to the end of your life and you're like, okay,
right.
What did I accomplish?
And isn't it a scary thing? I probably said this in one podcast or another, but speaking of that, and you can do all of those things in a godly manner mm-hmm. and still end up in your life. And this one speaker at our church said, I always have this nightmare that I make it to heaven, and God said, you did a wonderful job. Well done, my faithful. But then he said, look over here at what you could have done.
Oh my gosh, I know you've told me that before.
I know.
Like, oh, that just freaks me out.
Isn't that weird? Yeah, no, it gives me goosebumps because, I mean, you can do all of those earthly productive things in a godly manner.
Right.
But if you're not taking the time to be still to see what he needs you to do,
right.
you can miss a whole lot of stuff, and that is
exactly.
terrifying.
It's like the series that we're doing at church right now is called Uncomfortable. So it was like... They were talking about, the pastor was talking about that on Sunday. And here I had just, done the flight, which was very uncomfortable for
right.
me. And the whole time I'm doing this flight, God keeps saying, trust me and wait till you see what I have for you next. And then I'm hanging on to the edge of my seat like, what do you mean? I have to fly again? What do you mean? So then I go to church and they're like, okay, so we're doing a series on being uncomfortable. Like, and that is very, very overlooked in the Christian faith nowadays because we don't want to be uncomfortable.
No.
We want to be comfortable.
We have everything we need inside of our church.
Right.
Don't we?
Yes.
The deli.
We have a coffee bar.
Coffee bar. You have, everything that you find comfortable is usually inside of our churches nowadays.
Right. And our culture is all about comfort.
Yes.
It's all about, do what you want, when you want to, how you want to.
Self-care. I saw Amory talk about self-care with the Peacemaker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And that has kind of seeped into the church. Self-care is important on the right level.
Right.
But when it becomes all about, well, this is the way I am, and I don't want to change my personality to be godly, and I'm just going to be this way, and I'm doing this because it's my self-care, and I'm going to be gone from my kids 6 hours a day just to do what I want. Like Amory worked at a daycare when she was in college, and some of the women whose kids were in the daycare did not have a job outside the home, but their kids came to the daycare so they could go do what they wanted all day. Yeah. Just like, oh my gosh, that just makes me really mad. Mad. So did you have another point written down? I have another quote. Essentialism is not about how to get more things done. It's about how to get the right things done. It doesn't mean doing less for the sake of less either. It's about making the wisest possible investment of your time.
Which I think is so important. And takes maturity to know.
Yes. It does. It takes a lot of maturity. One of the writing devotionals that I've done like 3 times is writing his story. And I can't remember her first name. It's Bagnell is her last name. But anyway, one of the chapters is all about choosing how to spend your time. And one of the first things that she says is you've got to spend your time with the Lord first, which I really appreciated, because often when you read books about writing or whatever your thing is, it's all about productivity. Do this and do this and do this and do this. And one of the things I also appreciate is she has this little thing that you can print off about spending time with the Lord. It's got all these little boxes. Spending time with the Lord, and then spending time educating and investing in yourself, and investing in things that listening to podcasts or teachings or whatever. Because sometimes when we rest, we think rest just means sit in a chair and do nothing, and that's not exactly what rest means. When you're resting, you need to be filling yourself back up with what you need so that you can move forward.
Which is so, so important. As I look back on those timelines where I allowed the interruptions in my life, learning to be still, I do listen to a ton of podcasts. I do this. And I may be listening while I'm doing something else.
Me too, yeah.
But I know, and I notice that I'm keeping those key points that then later spill out of my mouth.
Yes.
Ministering to somebody that I feel needs it, or that God has placed in front of me. If I would write out a timeline, it would be crazy how those coincide.
And it's so interesting though, but that's our responsibility. Just think if you wouldn't have been, like if you knew, like you kind of heard the still small voice, like listen to this podcast right now while you're doing this. And you're like, no, I don't want to. And then you talk to that person and you have nothing.
Right.
You have nothing to give.
Nothing.
But when you do listen to that, and I'm the same way, when I'm cleaning the kitchen or doing something else, I'll be listening to a podcast. Even if I'm working my flower garden, I've got my phone in my pocket. I'm listening to something because I need to continually fill myself up, and I'm one of those people that takes a while to process things. So then I'll keep processing it for days and days and days, and just like that, if I'm talking to someone, then I hear it coming out of my mouth,
and it shocks you almost.
Yeah, I'm like, where'd that come from?
Yeah, I know. Yesterday I had a conversation. I said a couple of things, and I was like, I need to write that down. Where did that come from?
Right. Take notes on myself.
The thing was, show them what a victory in Christ looks like. That's the only thing they remember. They won't remember where you were. They'll remember how you came out of it.
Exactly.
And I was like, where did that come from? Oh, goodness.
Well, and I had another little Venn diagram. Since you can't see it, I'll just read it to you. It's one of the things that gets us into trouble is when we're doing what's most popular. Let me see. Okay, so when we're doing everything that's popular now.
And I find that just like absolutely soul shaking.
Yes.
The culture that we live in lives on such a basis of FOMO, the fear of missing out. And I see this in my children, okay?
Yes.
We have the social media where we constantly see what everybody's doing at all the time, what's most popular and what not. And it can entrap us in a whirlpool of just self-loathing and whatnot. So let's take it back to the kids and sports. If you're doing what's popular now, how many people do you know that get caught up with that?
Yeah,
they don't even enjoy what they're doing.
Exactly.
They don't even have an ounce of them that has joy in what they are doing.
Right.
But they are doing it for the fear of missing out.
Right, and he has this, in Essentialism, he has these diagrams, and one of them is just, like, you can't see it, but it's just like, it looks like a scribble, just back and forth, and that's what we end up doing.
Yeah.
When we're going after what's now, what's most popular, what everybody else is doing. We're just running back and forth and running back. We're not enjoying anything. We're not really being productive, and we're not, making progress spiritually, because it's onto this thing, and then onto that thing, onto that thing.
And how many times do we push that on our kids, and they don't even have a choice?
Right.
They don't even have a choice. So then that's the atmosphere that they think is normal. So they're never learned to be still unless they have an awakening of their own.
Right.
They're just think that they have to then bounce from one thing or to the other of whatever is most popular now. And you see parents doing that all the time in sports that their kids don't even like to play.
Right.
And you're like, well, why are you here? I don't understand what's going on.
Yeah, and everybody has seen that parent on the field yelling at their child like, you missed that one. Get back in there and do that again. And you're just like cringing.
Or people spend a tremendous amount of money for something that they don't even really truly want to kayak. But they buy a kayak because everybody else is doing it. It's popular.
Right.
Or whatever, you've seen a cruise that you want to go on. So you spend all that money. Or whatever it may be. I could sit here and name 1,000 things, but there was a decent chunk of my life wasted on what was popular. Mm-hmm. And I can never get that time back.
Right.
I never want my children to experience that.
Right, and I saw it in some of my peers when we got to college, because another drawback to the sports thing is like, when some of my friends that were boys that played football in high school, and it was like they're popular, everybody likes them,
right.
They get so much attention. And then we went to this big university together, and a bunch of them quit after the first semester because they couldn't stand not getting all the accolades. In fact, one of them told me, I just don't like it here because nobody knows me. And you can set yourself up and your kids up for disaster in their future life, because life is not a popularity contest.
Well, and they think that defines them. They don't know what actually defines them, because that has defined them for so long. The popularity of being whatever. And
they don't even know how to like themselves and be comfortable in their own skin.
No. That was hard for me when my son had played football all throughout his younger years, and then he made the decision that he didn't want to play in high school, and I was a little shook. I'm just like, what's he going to get into if he don't have that after school activity, or it's good for him this way or that way? But you know what? He's like, at 14 or 13 years old, 14, he said, it's not going to serve me in the long run.
Good for him.
He said, how is that ever going to matter in my life, playing football?
Right.
So he quit, and once he said that, I was like, okay, well, that makes sense. We're cool with that. He's learned to play guitar. And he doesn't miss it at all. And 10 years ago, if he would have said that, I'd have made him. I'd have been like, nope, this is what we're doing. This is what boys do.
Right.
We play football.
This is part of the game plan.
Yeah.
Well, and your son is like several of my sons, where, my son Damien, he loved to hunt when he was that age. And now he is 26, and he still hunts. He's still got the trail cam set up in our woods, and he's got his tree stand, and he's constantly coming over and checking it, and then coming over and hunting, and that is something that he can do for the rest of his life.
Right.
And football is not something you can do for the rest of your life. Even if you make it pro, you're not going to do it for the rest of your life.
And not to say that there's not people put into the sports world to fulfill spiritual productivity that needs to be filled. It just was not my kid. And if I wouldn't have, taken that moment to figure out what was going on and just assume that that's where he needed to be.
Right. And if there is someone in that specific purpose, they're going to have the desire.
Yeah.
The parents can't have the desire for them.
True.
So they're going to be the ones who are just like, I know that I need to do this. I want to do this. I desire to do this. And they will practice on their own. It's just like my kids. All of my kids had violin lessons. And the ones that really loved it would practice. The ones that hated it would not practice. One of my kids only learned one song, like in a whole year. He was like, forget it. We're pulling you out, kid. So do you have any final thoughts here?
I just have a little bit of advice. Just learn to be still. Take the time. Even your self-care time can be time where you're growing spiritually. It doesn't necessarily have to mean a pedicure. Not that that's bad.
I was going to say
not that that's bad at all.
Right.
But just pay attention to where you're spending your time, what you're doing. Accept every interruption as a lesson from God. That's really, really, really taking me. I'm still trying to work through that. Every time my phone rings and I roll my eyes maybe for a second because I'm thinking, what in the world do they need? I instead ask, what do they need? I ask God, what do you need?
Oh, that's good. I like that. What do you need? Because I know, you're talking about self-care. Sometimes when I'm just like so literally exhausted and I've pushed myself too hard, and I'm just like, I'm just going to watch a movie, and then I watch a movie, and then I'm like, I don't feel any better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
I wasn't feeding anything into
true.
myself.
So true.
So not that it's wrong to watch a movie. I'm not saying that.
No.
I'm just saying that when you need some input, you need to be fed on the Word, you need to listen to a podcast or a teaching. And if you're too tired to open your Bible, you can listen to something still.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, if your to-do list did not get anything checked off of it, spend some time with God to maybe have Him open your eyes to what you were productive with.
Yeah, that
you
is
maybe
important.
Overlooked.
Because I did that this morning. Like I always pull out my planner at the beginning of the week. But this morning I pulled it out, and then you guys might think this is funny, but I use these little sticky notes and I write down each thing I did that day. Mm-hmm. And so yesterday when Jerry had the day off, he wanted to go for a bike ride, and we went to Joe and Throw. So I put those in there because those are productive things.
Yes.
My mind's like, no, I don't want it. But those are productive things. I'm building relationship. I'm spending time together. And Amory had a nightmare about Jerry and I the other night. And she was like, Jerry and I are going to go out of town next week up to Thomas. And I wasn't going to go because we have a school assembly for this task force I'm on. And she's like, you have to go because I had a dream that you moved to Scotland so that you could write, and Dad moved to Canada so that he could fish.
Oh my goodness.
And so that's what we do on these things when we go to Thomas. He goes fishing and I go writing. And so she's like, you have to go. So I'm going. So thanks for joining us today. I'm hoping that these little points that are really we're learning right along with you.
Yes.
We haven't accomplished all this. We haven't perfected any of this. We're just kind of trying to figure it out just along with you. But hopefully just our talking through some of these things have helped you. And I will definitely link the book Essentialism, and I'm stealing Jessica's notes so I can put them with a podcast. And we will see you next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
We're so glad you could join us here for the Whole House podcast. Please subscribe, and if you give us a review, we might pick our favorite and send you a prize. Please remember to like the Whole House Facebook page and follow us on Instagram at _whole_house. And please sign up with your email on our website, thewholehouse.org, to be notified when new things are happening here at the Whole House. Thanks so much for listening.